Microsoft releases list of jobs most and least likely to be replaced by AI. Great news if you're a dishwasher. I loved the Jetsons growing up. Actually, I still love the Jetsons. What was interesting about the Jetsons is kind of imagining what would the future be like. One of the things that machines and technology did, they made your life easier by taking physical tasks for you. The real question is not, is it dangerous for AI to take the jobs of writers and authors and historians? I think the real question is, do you want a human writing your books? And I think we have to ask ourselves the question, is it valuable to have a human do this task or not? I saw a quote about AI that was really interesting. It was just this idea that AI has had no childhood. We need each other's experiences. I think the way to stand firm against that is to just be more human than ever. Be more human than ever. Microsoft just released a list of jobs most likely and least likely to be replaced by AI. Number 2 was a historian. So we're going to talk about this today. Hi, my name's Danielle Romero, and here on my channel we talk about American identity and family stories. Because it's personal to me. I started this channel 3 years ago looking for my hidden family history as an American. It gave me more questions than answers in some way, but we've been doing this together and it's been amazing. But I'm also a historian, and so I'm really familiar with what it means to be a historian, be a researcher, work with primary sources. But I'm also a millennial, and being a millennial, I grew up in the era of technology really getting its legs and running. I remember when we got our first family computer. It was in my parents' room and MS-DOS. Didn't even go online then. But I remember kind of getting instant messaging for the first time and chatting with my friends on AIM and emailing and all of these things. I feel like as I've grown up, technology has been growing up with me as well. But I have my reservations about AI, and I want to chat with you about this. But first, I'm going to go over this article with you. So let's jump over to this futurism article. And so it says Microsoft releases list of jobs most and least likely to be replaced by AI. Great news if you're a dishwasher. And what they're insinuating here is that most of the jobs that AI can come along or replace or whatever are not physical jobs, which is really interesting to me. I loved the Jetsons growing up. Actually, I still love the Jetsons. And what was interesting about the Jetsons is, they were kind of imagining what would the future be like? What would be like the 2020s, 2030s, 2040s, whatever, be like. One of the things that machines and technology did, they made your life easier by taking physical tasks for you. So you didn't have to cook anymore. You could just press a button and have a meal made for you, or even getting dressed, or, he's on the conveyor belt getting showered and dressed and dried, all that. But what has actually happened is that machines and technology and all of that, they're not doing a lot of the physical things for us to give us more free time. They're doing our thinking for us and our computing for us. What's the big deal about that? Well, as a historian, I'm worried. So according to the analysis, jobs most likely to be replaced include translators, historians, sales reps, writers, authors, customer service reps. Jobs that are safe from AI automation for now, in contrast, include heavy machinery and motorboat operators, housekeepers, roofers, massage therapists, and dishwashers. Have you heard of the book 1984? Maybe you saw it, a horrific movie, or you're at least familiar with the phrase Big Brother, this idea of this monolithic, all-knowing, all-monitoring political structure that is kind of overseeing how society thinks and lives and talks and writes. Well, there's a really interesting part of that book. There's something called a memory hole. And the memory hole is kind of like a phrase online, something gets memory holed. But what it really means is in the office that a man named Winston Smith worked at in the book 1984, in the office, you would have like a small chute that went down into an incinerator. And if something needed to be changed publicly, or there was like something embarrassing in the public record, or something that the official stance had changed on in the public record, whether it was like a newspaper article, photographs, whatever, they'd get sent down this chute and be incinerated, and it went down the memory hole. And so Winston Smith worked in the records department of the Ministry of Truth. And his job was to throw things down the memory hole. So he was seeing things in real time and saying like, okay, this is no longer true. We're getting rid of this. It's been officially erased from the record. And when I think about a tool like AI coming along, historians or helping to set straight a historical record, that's immediately what I was thinking of, because historical research is multifaceted. It's not just looking at a document on a page or something that can be uploaded into ChatGPT, but it is talking with people. It is handling objects. It is creating context from multiple perspectives. And we've been warned by science fiction for decades what's going to happen. And it's crazy to see it playing out in real time. And I'm not like a technology denier, but I will tell you, I got rid of ChatGPT. I don't have any of the other ones. I don't use it. And it's not really that good. And I think that's the other thing that's kind of surprising to me is that people are using these tools thinking they've kind of found like a secret. And I can always tell when someone has used ChatGPT. Like I can just tell. And I saw a historian 2 years ago do something really interesting in his class. He had his class use ChatGPT to write an essay on Frederick Douglass. So this was 2 years ago, but I think it's still relevant. So this teacher did such a great job. This historian, Jonathan S. Jones, he said, a classroom experiment, students critique a ChatGPT essay. And I want to just kind of go through really quickly why he decided to do this and what the outcome was. The meteoric rise of chatbots raised questions that, if left unanswered, put history educators in a bind. How can we meaningfully teach historical skills like writing and argumentation if our students can have ChatGPT draft an essay for them in seconds? How can we assess our students' understanding of course content if ChatGPT can conjure up instant answers to essay prompts with no learning required? He asked ChatGPT to write an essay about Frederick Douglass and the Civil War. And he said the essay was like pretty good. It didn't hallucinate, didn't really make anything up. Then he graded the essay. He said it was like a D. He felt it was like a D. So then he shared the essay with his students on Google Docs. And he said for 20 minutes, he had his students look at the essay and edit it, add stuff, take things away. What would make this essay better? And they did that together. And then they debriefed. He said, for example, ChatGPT in an essay had matter-of-factly stated that Frederick Douglass was born in 1818, but the students threw in this other observation, which is that, like many enslaved African Americans, Douglass actually spent most of his life without knowing his birthday. And he was saying that, this and other legacies of slavery can be overlooked when we're kind of just doing this smooth, easy to digest, lack of context answer. I thought that was an interesting approach. I'm going to tell you, if I was back in the classroom right now, I would have students, I would be taking classroom time to have students handwrite essays at this point, because I think things have gotten so out of hand. And I do wonder if there is going to be almost like a renaissance turning back to doing things in person, doing things by hand to just prove that a human did it, And I think we have to ask ourselves the question of like, is it valuable to have a human do this task or not? Now, I think for like a dishwasher, I mean, we have machines that wash dishes as well, but what about helping us interpret history? Is it important for me to have a human interpret that? And I think maybe the draw of having AI interpret history, which it really can't do, is people might be saying, well, we want something without a bias, but it's inherently impossible to not have a bias when you're interpreting history, even as a machine. The generative AI is a program. Programs have programmers who, have biases. I mean, that that's true. If you have ever used ChatGPT, you know that there are parameters about things you are and are not allowed to talk about, trying to get around that, and things like that. And so I think the real question is not, is it dangerous for AI to take the jobs of writers and authors and historians? I think the real question is, do you want a human writing your books? Do you want a human interpreting history? And it's going to be flawed. It's going to be flawed either way, honestly. And if you've read any ChatGPT writing, that. There is something impossibly beautiful about connecting with another flawed human being. I think that is what is so valuable. So what do we do? I would say that you right now today have the power to affect this. And that would be go and record history for yourself right now. Go be a part of the process of recording history, whether that is recording your parents or your grandparents or your aunties or your cousins, whatever, telling your family's story. Start doing your family tree work. Start visiting places where your family came from. Record that. Archive that. That is what being a historian is. And it's not just interpreting the information, but it's participating in the creation of preserving it. You can do that. You can do it. That's what this channel has been. And that's not to say that there are not benefits to using technology in the field. I will say I'm sure that there are. I mean, personally, I have just seen ChatGPT in particular become so trashy that I just don't even bother. I literally went out and bought a typewriter to start finishing my book because I'm so disillusioned by the direction that technology is going. Because again, like when I think about the Jetsons and how it was supposed to make our lives easier, so maybe we would have more time to think, more time to reflect, more time to work on becoming better as a society. That is not what has happened. It has given us an opportunity to stop thinking, stop wondering, to stop working things out in our head and asking those questions and just assuming that we can throw in a bunch of stuff and AI will do it for us. What's the trade-off? I do think AI is going to start creeping into these fields, but I think the way to stand firm against that is to just be more human than ever. Be more human than ever, and that means sharing human stories like I always encourage you to do, that I do on here. Dig in and hold on to the thing that makes us human. That's the emotion. That's the emotional response. That's the empathy towards each other. Maybe a year or so ago, I went through a slideshow of historic photos during desegregation and Jim Crow South because, as I've shared on here, my mom's gram left Louisiana during Jim Crow as a woman of color and moved to New York. And we were pretty unfamiliar with that side of our family experience. As I went through those photos with you, I mean, there were a couple where I had to pause and just like let myself cry for a minute and then come back because that's what people do. History is our story. So we're seeing the story of other people play out. And often that's a difficult story. And we respond and we bring part of ourselves to that. And that helps us to interpret and that helps us to carry the story forward and to make changes. And that is not something AI can do. We need to be able to share that and empathize with each other and encourage each other to keep going. So I just want to encourage you to challenge yourself this week to save a little bit of history and help make history more human again. If you would like to join me off of YouTube and come over on Patreon to my Patreon community, it's patreon.com/NYTN. Otherwise, we'll talk soon.